Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. Familia. We're going to Arrowhead Country, Familia. We're going to Chiefs Kingdom today for the NFL Insider Series, and it is caliente, caliente, caliente. And I'm not just talking about the weather, but so make sure you're following Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, get this great content because man, we're talking to our compadre, our amigo, our buen hermano, Joshua Brisco. You find him here we go. Let me put this up here. You find him at JB Brisco on the Twitter X machine. He's the editor of SI Chiefs, sichiefs.com. And I'm going to tell you about I'm going to let him tell you about his new podcast on the KC Sports Network, which is, it's kind of new, but it's not. But first off, bienvenido, mi amigo. Welcome. Thank you. Muchas gracias for joining.
Dude, thank you for having me again. I don't want to part the curtain too much, I guess, and spoil how this whole thing works. But the fact that we were just talking for the 20 minutes before we finally started podcasting here, I was like, oh yeah, no, we need to talk about the Chiefs receivers and not just sports media or food, which is often a place that you and I seem to end up. So an annual tradition that I genuinely look forward to now. This is at least year 3, maybe 4.
Cuatro.
This is 4. Okay.
4 for 4.
I don't
You were one of the first people to say yes to me.
That's amazing because I feel like the energy in your offer and invitation to come on the show is undeniable, and I don't think I have an annual pass through of a podcast like this in any other form. It's just good to talk to you again. Good to talk about the Chiefs receivers for also the 4th consecutive year, I'm sure. And I'm really happy to look forward to the season with you here, my friend.
No, I'm pumped. No, it's I mean, you have lived many lives in the last 4 years. I mean, I think once we in the last 4 years, there's obviously back-to-back championships. I think we're coming off a championship in one of those years. I mean, you know what? We could just start let's just start with number 15. I mean, gosh, it's kind of crazy to think that last year some people considered it a letdown, but then he was the best player on the planet, for the games in the playoffs and showed everything. I'm going to tell you right now, and Chiefs Kingdom, please don't cancel me for this, but I recommended, the 2 rounds before. I thought they weren't going to be able to get through the Ravens. I thought they weren't going to be able to get through the Bills before that. And when it came to the Super Bowl, I'm like, I know everything tells me the 49ers should win, but number 15, that man. So
he is special in a way that makes you feel bad at analyzing the game, right? Like that to me, because I think I picked the Ravens in the AFC Championship game once we finally got there. So just a little shared, we can both be on this sinking ship together. I've paid my dues for that pick. But there is something deeply ingrained within us where we want to figure out why the obvious thing isn't always the obvious thing, because so many times Peyton Manning lost a lot of playoff games. Brady lost less, but you kind of got to that point with him too, where it became a cliche to be like, you never count out touchdown Tom. I mean, it's Tom Brady. I'm going to take Brady all the way to the Super Bowl. There has been no greater test of that for me and for the entire NFL world than Patrick Mahomes. He's never not made an AFC Championship game. That you shouldn't be able to say something like that about a quarterback who's at this point in his career where you could have genuinely argued last year, not even 30. You could have argued last year, like, well, this is what it looks like when they don't make a Super Bowl run, right? The wide receivers have just been self-sabotaging all year long. The defense is very good, but is a very good defense and no reliable pass catchers outside of Travis Kelce. Is that really anything? And that at that point in the year, Kelce had started the year injured, and so getting back to full speed for him took a little bit. Rashee Rice ends up coming on later in the year, and you can see it a little bit. But Kadarius Toney lines up off sides against the Bills in the regular season, and you go, wait a second, the NFL found an antidote to Mahomes' magic, and it's waiting for his teammates to sabotage him. All of that to say, you had an argument to make. I had an argument to make of Patrick Mahomes is the best football player I've ever seen, period. But he can't win these games by himself, right? And then he plays exceptional football. He gets a little bit of help from enough teammates. And here we are again with another AFC Championship game appearance, another Super Bowl appearance, and a back-to-back championship. Now we're talking about a three-peat, which again, it's boring, not very useful analysis to say, well, they have Mahomes. I think they will three-peat. But it's foolish to argue against that on some level. So
Yeah.
it has been remarkable to watch this dude's career, and he continues to find ways to surprise, even when he cannot surprise me by being excellent anymore. Still finds a way to do it every once in a while. It's incredible.
So one thing that's been noticeable, and partly it's because of the way people are, partly is losing Tyreek Hill. He's not throwing as deep as he has in the last couple of seasons. He hasn't thrown as deep. His ADOT has gone down. He's I mean, people are throwing, they're throwing deep, they're throwing guys deep. I'm sorry, defenders are playing deeper, so they're just kind of he's just taking what's available. But one of the things that his last down year, it seemed like the next year he was at 5,000 yards. Is there in this next step in the evolution? Is considering the guys that they drafted and signed? Are we looking? I've got it in there. Bombs away more. Are we looking at that?
It's something they've talked about a little bit through the early offseason activity stuff, that they do want to bring back the deep passing game. And yeah, I think everything you touched on there is part of it. The way they got to more of a take what you can get kind of offense is multifaceted. There's no single reason for it, right? Not really losing Tyreek Hill. They knew what they were doing. Trading away Tyreek Hill and then having Juju Smith-Schuster be your number one wide receiver option the next year. That is he had almost 1,000 yards. I was looking at that yesterday. It was like 933 or something. But that is a change in personnel that kind of pushes you that direction. Travis Kelce, and this was even more on the Alex Smith days, Travis Kelce used to be a real worthy downfield threat. No pun intended. We'll get to worthy in a second. But he's a different type of player now that just feasts over the middle, right? Defenses were playing them differently, saying, yeah, we're not going to let you kill us 60 yards at a time, kill us 6 yards at a time. And Mahomes learned how to do that. This year, though, I do think they're going to be able to affect multiple levels of the field with the group of guys they have, especially when Rashee Rice is, I'm going to say, back. I'm assuming he's getting suspended before the year still, but the NFL has surprised me with their timelines before, so we can get to him more directly in a minute. But Hollywood Brown is a downfield threat who you cannot limit into being just a downfield threat, right? I think Xavier Worthy is the same deal, but he's a rookie in this offense, and so is that a fantasy pick you want to make? I don't know. We'll get there too. But
I have a good question for that after, but I want to keep you going.
I think philosophically it is playing into that hand where you say, hey, they did not evolve after Tyreek Hill and say we never want to play that type of football again. And Tyreek was also a multi-level threat, obviously, but the deep ball is what's iconic from him. But I do think we're going to see a pass-heavy offense. Not surprising. That's been the case even when it's been shorter distances. And I do think we're going to see them push the ball down the field a little bit more. I am particularly bullish on what that means for Hollywood. But altogether, I do think that's a direction they want the offense to move in, where Rice and Kelce can be intermediate, absolutely devastating in the intermediate. Brown and Worthy push you downfield, and especially Brown, I think, has the flexibility to kind of do everything they ask of receivers in this offense.
So right now, Patrick Mahomes is going off at number 40, number 48 in best ball drafts on Underdog. So fourth round, which is I think 2 rounds after he was going last year, coming off his 5,000 yard season. He feels like a little bit of a bargain, doesn't he?
Kinda, yeah. That's lower than I expected. I've seen a few ADP things, but I hadn't heard that about Mahomes. Yeah. What do you know where that puts him amongst quarterbacks?
He is behind Lamar Jackson, so I think he's 4.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that feels like good value to me. I don't know that it's like gonna change the scope of your league if you are picking between Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. But I do think there's a real threat for a 5,000 yard, 50 touchdown type of year that he had back in 2018, which is hell of a way to burst into the league, by the way.
Yeah. You're taking shots at Dan Marino and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. You're just, He's the reason why.
What year was that? Oh, that was his first year. Ridiculous.
And the amazing thing is now he's almost like when people look at what do we do with JJ McCarthy? What do we do with Drake May? Should we sit them? It's like, yeah, go look at what's happening in Kansas City. That can work. That can work.
We also saw Mahomes. This is something that I don't want to say keeps me up at night, but I've thought about it. We also saw Mahomes in Week 17 at the end of his rookie year, and he was unreal playing with backups. And then they obviously, I don't begrudge Andy Reid for letting Alex Smith play in the playoffs, but I do wonder if Mahomes hops in. They had a really rough stretch late 2017. I think they had like 3 weeks in a row of losing to like all three New York teams, or it was the Cowboys and then both the Jets and Giants, something wild like that. And it was like, oh, like this is not a real contender. They need to do something. I'd like to see what Mahomes has. I remember having that conversation on the radio that many years ago, and it still comes up every once in a while. Like I think Mahomes benefited greatly from being behind Alex Smith. I really wonder what would have happened if he would have started if he would have gotten the start mid-season. That's the only thing I keep thinking about.
Yeah, because I mean, and actually, I remember that game thinking, I wasn't doing fantasy analysis. I just for my own leagues. I was like, that's a guy I'm targeting late
Yeah.
because I loved what I saw there. So now, and of course, now Andy Reid has been elevated to sainthood when it comes to play calling. Okay, mi amigo, I'm going to let you pick where we're going to go the next direction. Should we go receiver? Should we go Worthy and Brown, or should we go to Travis Kelce?
Let's go receivers, because it's going to be hard to talk about anything else without just acknowledging what this receiver room looks like right now.
So Xavier Worthy, fastest guy in the ever in the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. Hollywood Brown has also been phenomenal. Both have shown that they're not just straight line John Ross type guys. I even saw Worthy take on some contact here and there, but one thing about Worthy that sticks in mind, and it was something that you told me 2 years ago about Sky Moore, is that Andy Reid's offense is hard for rookie receivers to pick up. So that's why I keep that in my mind. And when I think of picking Xavier Worthy, who is going about the same range as Hollywood Brown, sometimes even a little bit ahead of him. Yeah, amigo, can you break down how these two are going to work out?
Yeah, I think it's mind-boggling that Brown's not the first Chiefs receiver off the board.
Yeah.
That's my boldest take at this point, and this will change some in training camp and everything. I'm prepared to have some evolving here, but I think we are. No one else is saying this as confidently as I feel, and so it's making me second guess myself. But 1,000-yard Hollywood Brown season feels very, very plausible to me. Obviously, again, with Rashee Rice, whose name isn't on the thingy, but a lot of things revolve.
We'll go into him later.
Okay, we'll put a pin in that. But depending on when he's playing, regardless, I kind of think Hollywood's the guy here. If you got a full season from Rashee Rice, then maybe I'm wrong, because you could have the guy who was actually in the offense last year. But I think you're absolutely right to point out the complexity of Andy Reid's offense, and sometimes people I think are confused about what that really means, because he says the route and you run the route, right? Kind of. There's all of the sight adjustment stuff that we've seen from Travis Kelce more and more over the years that really Kelce and Mahomes have kind of popularized, what it means for them to both see something in an alignment or even mid-play, and then for Kelce to do something different with a route than what was originally the suggestion on the page. But it's not really lines on the page either. And for the Chiefs wide receivers, they have a lot of very similar body types. Worthy and Hollywood being kind of the most obvious ones right now, but the big body X receiver on this team is going to be Justin Watson, who's fine, but he was a special teamer in Tampa. He was a role player last year for the Chiefs. He'll have one amazing catch a game, and then you'll never hear from him any other time. But he could be the MVS of this year's team. And if you're paying him $2 million instead of $12 million or whatever it was, that's okay. All that to say, Brown is also learning the Chiefs' offense, but he's not learning NFL defenses.
Right.
He's starting from a different position than Rashee Rice or other guys that would be carrying over from one year to another, but he's not starting from scratch. The other thing, I'm not big picture worried about this, but in the very, very immediate, Xavier Worthy basically did nothing in the offseason activities He had a hamstring issue really
Yeah.
early on in rookie camp, like day 2, I think. And then he was at the OTAs and all the voluntary stuff, and then obviously the mandatory stuff. He was there. He was standing next to Matt Nagy, the offensive coordinator, for stretches of practice, and they're trying to get him the mental reps. But Andy Reid talked about like the value of these camps is to get different mixes of guys in there and to test what they can do and to begin to see how the pieces work together. And he hasn't been able to do that. If he's healthy throughout training camp, that might not matter. And again, this isn't me being like, he's injury prone. He's only going to play 6 games a year. I don't believe that. But it's just one more little speed bump in him trying to fully get up to speed. So I was thinking about, of course, the Sky Moore conversation that we had 2 years ago, and thinking, well, like I think I appropriately scared people away from that one. But you probably didn't draft Rashee Rice with that logic. And you're like,
Right.
well, he ended up being wide receiver 1 at the end of the year. Even with Rice, he was, I don't have his exact game log, but I think it was week 10 or 11.
I'll look it up while you do
or,
while you're
or
talking.
game 10 or 11 when he had kind of like a breakout game, and the rest of the year he was their number 1 receiver. It was still pretty late in the season. I don't know when you would have given up on that or continued to buy the hype. And that was in large part still out of necessity. So Worthy is a first round draft pick where they traded up a couple picks for, not a second rounder like Rice and Moore. Worthy is more pro ready than either of those guys are. I still think that Worthy will have more opportunities and has the skill set to be a factor as a rookie. I would be floored, barring injuries or something. I'd be floored if he was a more productive receiver than Hollywood Brown. I think Hollywood Brown's wide receiver 1 this year, pending Rashee Rice's legal status. And then if Xavier Worthy's wide receiver 3, I think this team would be thrilled with that this season.
And just so we know, they had their bye in week 10, and it was week 12 that he had his first. Rashee Rice had his first 100-yard game, 107 yards against Vegas.
And then at that point on, you could see that coming together. But that's
yeah, he was every week starter at that point.
Right.
So
I think Worthy could be that guy at some point, but I think this receiving room is better away from the rookies. Can you compare to last year, right? Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore could be on the roster. Mecole Hardman could be on the roster, but they're not going to try to make those guys. They would rather Worthy start. I think that having Mecole Hardman is a little bit of a contingency plan where he can do a lot of the things. He knows the offense. He has been in it for a while. He's a more limited player, but they brought him back as a late addition, like in the midst of kind of offseason activity stuff. I think there's a little correlation there. I am very bullish on Hollywood. I am probably passing on Worthy just at that draft position right now. And I'm curious about Rashee Rice. That depends on how risky you feel like being with your fantasy roster at that point, I think.
I'm kind of like, looking at what Rice did last year, I'm kind of like at that point, Worthy to me is one of those receivers that I want to pick up after somebody dropped him. That they're like, he has a bad, he doesn't get a lot of run in week 4. And it's like, okay, I want to grab him between week 4 and 8 for that back half of the season. So
I think that's
right. That's one thing. All right. Gotta do a Taylor Swift reference there. He's the fearless tight end 1. The one thing about him, and I was listening to this on the New Heights podcast after the Super Bowl, where he talked a little bit about load management, just kind of like being ready, kind of like taking it easy during the season and being ready for this. I think that gives me, I still think he's the tight end 1 because I think he's the only tight end out there. Him and maybe Mark Andrews are the only ones who are primary targets for their quarterbacks, and for good quarterbacks. But is that him talking, and then when the bullets start flying, it's like, okay, 15, I'm over here.
Yeah. He was asked about that in a presser at some point during the offseason, the OTAs and mini camps. And I believe his exact quote was, "Wear and tear me, baby," when asked about limiting the wear and tear on his body at this point. So he signed a reworked 2-year contract this offseason that gives him a little bit of a raise and basically guarantees his money for these next 2 years. I think we are probably about to watch the last 2 years of Travis Kelce. If he plays beyond that, I'd be thrilled. I would be very, very surprised if he retired after this season. Feels like there's a 2-year runway just kind of laid out there right now. I think, despite the fact that he is ancient by NFL standards and a pretty young man by other world standards, I think the narrative of him, like, air quotes, losing a step last season, I think it's been overblown. He hyperextended his knee on what would have been the Friday practice before the opening week of the year. They played on a Thursday, so it was their last practice. It might have been on Tuesday for a Thursday game, whatever. He doesn't play in week 1, right?
I
Hyperextending his
remember
knee and
that.
making him miss that game, that's a big deal. Like, and he was beating himself up about like getting lazy during that rep in practice, which, to be honest, I doubt. But he's, figuring out a way that he can make that true to himself, that, if he was more locked in, if he was more focused, he wouldn't have had his knee buckle like that. I have to acknowledge there's a chance that Travis Kelce gets hurt in training camp this year, that he's banged up in week 6, that impacts him the rest of the year and all of that. But I think there is an incredibly clear line along the load management type of thing, from injury to slow start to the physical wear and tear to not playing in week 18 last year, did not play in the 17th game. It was 15, 16 yards short of 1,000 yards. Already has the longest consecutive 1,000-yard streak in tight end history. Has so many records at this point, it's hard to remember them all. But he left 1,000 yards on the table. He didn't play in week 1, and he didn't play in week 18. And then the playoff run, the dude looked 29 years old again, maybe younger. It was all back when he had 1 week off. So the first round bye in the playoffs matters, or not having to play in week 18 matters. But really, I think they should be trying to take some things off of Travis Kelce's plate. And that does not worry me from a fantasy perspective, because he's going to play a ton. You saw him chest bump Andy Reid during the Super Bowl. That was, to my understanding, because he wanted to be in the football game trying to make plays to win a back-to-back title. So there's no loss of fire. I think there's virtually no loss of physical skill. Again, he's been playing a very physical game for a long time. He is older now, I understand that. But it's not like they're running a shell of Travis Kelce out there. He is still Travis Kelce. Him maintaining that little bit of extra health, that little bit of youth throughout the season, I think that's the most important thing. And if that means he plays 75% of the offensive snaps, I think that's just fine. Noah Gray, and then they just drafted Jared Wiley out of TCU. Huge, tall tight end, not going to help in the blocking game at this point right now, but as a pass catcher and as a seam threat, super interesting. I don't think Gray or Wiley will be playable with Kelce healthy. But just 2 names to know. They also signed Irv Smith Jr., the former Bengals tight end, you might remember. But I think Wiley as a long-term bet, I'm pretty enamored by. This is Noah Gray's last year of his rookie deal. Fine tight end 2. I think Wiley's ceiling is higher at this point. But I think Kelce is tight end 1, not just for the Chiefs, but in fantasy still. Even if he plays a little bit less, I think he is the primary weapon, with Hollywood being still, again, 1,000-yard contender at number 2.
I think the fantasy community is doing a little bit of kind of like when Jordan was was winning MVPs
Yeah.
so often that it was
Yes.
boring. That Charles Barkley definitely. I know you're a Suns fan, so he definitely deserved that one.
Got a Barkley jersey downstairs. It's the
Oh,
prized
Barkley's one of
possession.
my all-time favorites.
I have an NBA Finals hat over there. Not an NBA Finals championship hat,
Yeah, I'm
but an
sorry about
NBA
that.
Finals hat with the Suns logo.
Sorry
It's
for your
okay.
loss.
Things are great in Phoenix. I don't know if you've been paying attention lately.
but
Sorry.
but no, I think people want to Sam Laporte is the new hot thing, and people want to anoint and Mark Andrews is always there. They want to anoint Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid, but I'm just going to keep going at Travis Kelce, because I think he's the only one who's going to. I think 100 receptions is well within his range. I mean, because he was right about that, missing 2 games. So that's my fearless prognostication for that he's going to still be the tight end 1. So
I think he could carry your fantasy team like he carried Taylor Swift down the stage in full costume, top hat, and everything. Like a generational heater for him, man. The whole Kelce family's been on fire since the Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl. But my God, man, who's had a better 3-year stretch in the world than Travis Kelce? You might be able to argue Taylor Swift, and now they're intertwined. So I mean, what an absolute run, man.
Hey, if you're gonna outpunt your coverage, do it outpunt your coverage with the most famous person. I mean,
Shoot for the most famous woman in the world and see where you land.
it's so funny. Somebody yesterday put on Twitter, who's more famous, Paul McCartney or Taylor Swift?
Huh.
And Taylor Swift 70-30. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, Paul
Yeah.
McCartney's been famous for over 60 years. So
I do think it's hilarious that Paul McCartney was, I'm guessing this was the onus of that question being asked, but Paul McCartney was there watching Travis Kelce carry Taylor Swift off stage, or to the couch or whatever. The last year has felt like a big ridiculous Mad Libs game, and I'm here for it. It's been great. It's been a blast.
Oh, I'm going to ask you that one. I'm going to save a minute to talk about the Swifty world. Rashee Rice. I know I don't want to. I'm not. I don't. You already talked about what could happen, what could not happen when he's on the field. How does he impact the passing game?
Majorly. Although I still think there's a chance. I think again, this might be kind of a counter take right now. I think there's a chance. Let's say he is suspended for 6 games, 8 games. When he comes back, the offense will have been working without him for a while. I think he would immediately hop back over Worthy. And this team doesn't have such a rich depth chart at receiver that it's not like Rice won't be able to find playing time. But I could still see this being a Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown offense, certainly while Rice is gone. And then Rice comes in as the third option. Again, now I'm talking about Worthy as option number 4. It kind of goes back to some of my skepticism, maybe. I don't even feel like a skeptic. It's just how I think it's going to play out. That kind of all bakes together. But I think Rashee Rice does something that the rest of the guys on this team don't do. He's a different type of target, the intermediate threat and after the catch. That there's a very, very, very useful player in there. But even before all the offseason stuff, I was never crowning him as like an NFL wide receiver 1. Like if healthy Travis Kelce is your first option or Rashee Rice is your second option, you can live that way. But I think Kelce, Brown, Rice is a hell of a trio. And then you have perhaps the fastest man in the NFL as option number 4. So again, I find myself, maybe it's because I'm so optimistic about Brown and I'm worried about when that Rice suspension is going to drop. If he doesn't get suspended, you got great value wherever you take him because I think most of the league is expecting him to miss some time. But I think he could miss half the season and come back and not be as productive as he was last year for nothing but football reasons, just because they're building more around him at this point. They're not going to have to force as much to him and through him. And the offense does evolve and bring in new pieces as the season goes on. So it's going to be complicated. And I think in redraft leagues or in best ball stuff and everything, I'm probably letting somebody else live that Rashee Rice experience this year.
Yeah, he's going at the end of the 6th round, early 7th round of best ball drafts. So
if you're happy with your receivers at that point, then take your shot on Rashee Rice because second half of the year, maybe he has wide receiver 2 sort of potential. But I'll probably end up letting somebody else have that in my leagues.
Yeah, based on what you just told me, my recommendation is going to be unless you're picking him for your bench. Yeah. So at best your flex position, don't let him go. Let him go.
I think you have to, at least until we know. Hopefully, for everyone involved, I hope we get the suspension news sooner rather than later. I think the longer that drags on, the worse it is for
yeah, it would be all too well to get some news early on that, but I'm not expecting it. So
I wish his car had some red brake lights. That would have been a lot better.
Oh man. Well, I'm saying you belong with me to Isiah Pacheco a lot in drafts. I think he's one of the biggest bargains. He's going in the 4th round. He's going off as the RB11. I mean, he's unopposed, right? I mean, it's just Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the Jet McKinnon role.
And let me just tell you, Clyde is not Jet McKinnon. They brought Clyde Edwards-Helaire back on another 1-year deal. Or on his first 1-year deal after declining his 5th-year option. This running back room is Isiah Pacheco right now. I think they're going to have him catch a few more passes this year. He was a little better at that last year.
Music.
Just a little more. He needs to be better at pass protection to catch a lot more passes. They've got to trust him to protect Mahomes, and that is not where he makes his money. But Clyde had his worst rushing season of his career last year. Who's running back 3? I don't know. There's a couple UDFAs, a couple guys they brought in last year. We'll find out. Louis Rees-Zammit, the rugby star, he's going to be a special teamer if he makes the roster. Maybe he can be like your 4th running back. You don't really want to see the field. I don't think he's ready to be an NFL running back right now, though, and that's reasonable to me. He's learning the sport still. What I have said is that the Chiefs don't only not have a running back 3 right now. I don't think they have a running back 2. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a number 3 running back that you can have around because he knows your offense, and maybe he can be a pass protector a little bit and do a little bit of the McKinnon stuff. I wonder if they bring somebody else in after cut downs in camp. But no, I am with you. I think Pacheco at that spot is a total value. I don't know who else is running the football on this team.
Oh man. Oh goodness gracious.
I didn't even think about him being like under the radar right now.
He totally is. He's total bargain right now. I think people are sleeping on him. People are pushing right now in early drafts. People are pushing down the running backs and going wide receiver crazy early. I think that's going to balance out a little bit, but I still think unless Pacheco, there's some big hype early on in the season, I think Pacheco is going to be a bargain for us. All right, man, a quick question on the defense with L'Jarius Sneed leaving. This was a great defense against the run and the pass last year. So, does it look like they're going to take a little bit of a step back, at least early, which is kind of what Spags happens with Spags?
Yeah, you're right. That does happen with Spags anyway, so I think that's reasonable. Trent McDuffie was the best corner on the team last year too, so I think that is the little secret. He's an absolute stud. Chris Jones is the best defender on this team altogether. They've got depth at a lot of different spots. The secondary is loaded. You will see for weeks, I think, the challenge of who do you attack, and is Joshua Williams or Jalen Watson getting most of the other cornerback spot, kind of in Sneed's shoes there. It'll depend on how they move guys around. They're so multiple that way, so much versatility in that defensive backfield. That's very much on purpose, how they've built this team. Not having an all-pro caliber corner, L'Jarius Sneed, in the mix is obviously a ding to the defense. And this is partially because of how good they've been developing corners. I'm not really worried about it taking a big step back, especially in the back half of the year.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, then that could mean fantasy goodness early on in the season. So
finding underrated Chiefs has been a weird trend here, but I think the defense might be among them. The Ravens week, I don't know, man. Fantasy defenses are hard early in the year regardless. The Chiefs are very, very stable there, except for Sneed, which is a big except, but they've pretty much run it back except for Sneed.
But it might mean good things for Mahomes, because that means he's going to have to actually score more than 2 or 3 touchdowns in a week. So, all right, amigo, I got to tee you up on anything Taylor Swift related, just to feed the algorithm to get Taylor Swift into this conversation.
It has been a tremendously fun, tremendously weird stretch watching the tight end of your football team, whose quarterback was the most famous man in the NFL after Brady retired. Patrick Mahomes is now not the most famous player on his own team, and watching Travis Kelce go about all of this might be taking it in a slightly different angle. So I apologize if it's not quite algorithmically sound enough. But one of the kind of impressive things of this stretch has been watching Travis Kelce, who is famous, right? He was very locally famous, somewhat internationally known. Again, Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, huge for the Kelce family and all of that. But as Travis Kelce has kind of grown through these different levels of fame, you have never seen that man look uncomfortable with the number of eyes on him. And that to me is probably the most underrated part of all of this, because you can do it for former Taylor Swift boyfriends, or you can do it for football players who find extra stardom or whatever it may be. But Kelce has always been just, I don't even think craving the spotlight. I think he has been comfortable in the spotlight at so many turns that it makes him one of the only athletes in the world who I think could have handled this rocket launch into superstardom, taking selfies with royalty, meeting Paul McCartney and Tom Cruise, could be royalty depending on who you ask. There has never been a feeling of him shying away from the camera, but he's also not been seeking it out in the, early in his career when he had the dating show, the reality dating
Yeah.
show, that may have been seeking out a camera. And that's one of the only experiences he's ever talked about regretting. Everything else has just been a very authentic version of him. And I've seen that in press conferences and interviews with him and interactions other people have had in their stories, to now him carrying Taylor Swift on stage in London. There is a natural sort of effortlessness of all of that I think is truly, truly special and has made Travis Kelce uniquely qualified for this ridiculous role in life that he has filled so well.
And I think, I mean, he's probably one of the only guys who really could say, hey, I'm going to shoot my shot, give her a
Yeah.
bracelet.
Yeah.
And I mean, how many guys are going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to ask out Taylor Swift, but God, I think it's,
And who's ready for that heat? Nobody.
And I love it. I love it that it, I love the whole phenomenon. I mean, I told you off show and people on the Familia, you all know that I'm a Swiftie. My daughters are Swifties. They turned me into one. So they gave me bracelets to give out at the concert. So I think the whole phenomenon is phenomenal. The, NFL meets Taylor Swift, Swiftie Nation. I think, yeah. And believe me, give us more Taylor Swift on camera. Just give us more Taylor
We can
Swift.
live with it. Everybody deal with it. Just if it's not for you, know that it's for a lot of people, and most well-adjusted human beings can find some joy somewhere in this entire circus, in a very silly sport where the ball isn't round, and a very silly entertainment world where everything is clickable. It's okay to just kind of sit back and enjoy the weird, funny thing. In fact, I would argue in behalf of it.
I love it. Love it. Give me more weird and wonderful. And it's, for me, it's more reason to root for a three-peat. So just
Works for me, baby.
Yeah, hey, get more clicks for you. More clicks for you.
I'm happy.
More
I'm
episodes.
happy to keep watching Super Bowls.
So last one, amigo, before we close it out, you mentioned that you spent a little time in Phoenix, one of the hotbeds of Mexican food. Any favorites that stick out?
Literally just hot too. Yeah, my wife and I did we took the train to Lamy, New Mexico, where I had a green chili burger that I still think about pretty frequently. I had some pictures popped up. I also know we're like at the end of showtime here, but my God, man, I ate so much good food. We were in New Mexico for several days, Santa Fe, and then all over Arizona, like literally almost like up north and south, Grand Canyon up all the way down to Surprise. I ate so much green chili on every dish that I possibly could for so long. I think I had chilaquiles twice, one of which was for the first time, and then the second was for the second time. Absolutely remarkable. One of those restaurants had a s'mores hot chocolate, I'm remembering now, just being absolutely delightful. We had this mushroom risotto in Santa Fe that I'm looking at a picture of now. Not necessarily Mexican food, but my goodness, that was tremendous. Yeah, right here you can see I got those breakfast chilaquiles with the hash browns in there too. That was special. That was the first thing I thought of when you asked. Got those Christmas style though. Get me the green chili, get me the red chili, and let me face God, then walk backwards into hell. It was my favorite type of food, maybe my favorite place in the country, and some absolutely immaculate plates.
Chilaquiles is one of the, to me, I know it's considered breakfast food. We have it for dinner plenty of times on our family.
Why not?
It's
we had that at like 11:30 or something. I think I could probably tell you on the timestamp.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner, all day. Chilaquiles all day.
12:47 p.m. I'll eat it anytime, anywhere. Maybe not anywhere. I'll eat it in New Mexico or Arizona for sure.
Oh man. Well, I will. I would love to join you anytime, anywhere. But I love every time, anytime, anywhere that we're on. I always have a blast. Mi amigo, please feel free. Let's close up shop, and I'll let you pump any and everything.
The only thing that you didn't mention, you teased earlier that we haven't talked about, is Only Weird Games is now the episode.
That's right.
Or the title of the podcast, formerly known as Times Ours on The Athletic, with myself, Seth Kaiser, and Nate Taylor. Same guys, very similar show, but now on KC Sports Network. If you want to subscribe to that, just search for KC Sports Network in your podcast app of choice, and you'll find the KC Sports Network Chiefs feed. Several shows on there, but Only Weird Games is the one that I am roughly 33% of. We can say like 32, but almost a third of Only Weird Games. And then you can read everything that we do over on SI.com. That's SIChiefs.com. That'll take you straight there. And we've done a little bit of fantasy now, mostly just sort of the chaos throughout the offseason. We've done a little fantasy, a little suspension talk, a little bit of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce on stage in London. It's been a hell of an offseason already.
Well, if you're ever stuck to have another person to join, or need to talk a little fantasy, just feel free. Just feel free.
I will holler at you, my friend, no doubt.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and yes. So, familia, you belong with Only Weird Games. Come on, let's do this. Let's do this.
Our arms are open for you.
Vámonos. So, familia, just closing up shop. Muchas gracias for joining us. Muchas gracias to our amigo Josue, who as I love to call him. Make sure you're following us on Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, get these great shows. And also, you're going to see my content. I push it out at Jorge Martin 17 on the Twitter, X Machine, Yahoo, RotoWire, Fantasy Pros. Just look for those. So, otra vez, muchas gracias everybody for joining us. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.